So, guys, I want to review the episode Ballin from the Boondocks. And, I also got my MF Doom mask right here, so I'll see how I like it. It's like hot and heavy under here. No pun intended. So, Ballin is a very interesting episode of the Boondocks because I think there's a lot of different themes I see in this episode. Like, first of all, definitely, Riley dreaming of being a basketball player. Like, unfortunately, like, there's a lot of black youth that kind of have that dream because there's always that stereotype of black people being good at basketball, or sometimes, like I was a kid of the '90s, so I grew up on Michael Jordan. There's people before me growing up on like other like black grow up by other like black basketball players. So it always kind of, and like there's Kobe Bryant, there's also like Shaquille O'Neal and other famous ones. So there's always been a sense of that's kind of almost like the African American dream is to be like this god tier basketball player and like have a lot of bitches and have a lot of money. And that's kind of true with Riley. And I also kind of like that this is more of a character analysis or a character study of Riley because we kind of see that, also with him that, and you see this with a lot of basketball players, like he's kind of more into being like a Harlem Globetrotter, like all the showboating. And that does happen a lot in basketball. And it's also kind of bad because there's also stereotype of the dancing black man and the show off black man. So, the whole showboating thing kind of goes down to that shuck and jive stereotype you see associated with African American people, and also I think like within this episode you kind of see like the other issue with Riley, which is that he gets overconfident. He's into being flashy and he's kind of like full of himself. So he has an issue with arrogance. Like that's kind of almost like the Freeman that in their genetics of the Freeman family. That's kind of their biggest issue is that they all kind of struggle with ego. Like granddad is selfish and he wants to overcompensate with his life by spending money on the house, getting a woman, and that be that really. And then also with Huey, he gets very angry when people laugh at him, and there is a side of Huey that is a hypocrite. And with Riley, I think that he really wants to kind of fit into the character of Black Youth. Like he wants to be the rapper, he wants to be known as a gangster, he wants to be known as a basketball player. He really wants to fit into all these different things. So, and that all comes down to insecurity and ego, and I can kind of understand that because a lot of African Americans do struggle with insecurity because you look at this country and how it's treated African Americans for generations. Like you're always black people are always looked at as secondary or something that's pitiful or feel sorry for type of thing. So I can understand them all having that, but also it being part of the generational trauma that you see with African Americans. Another thing that I would say is that that definitely, I think in this episode, I like how he tries to learn to work with people. He learns from his failures, but the problem with him is he still, and this is kind of the cute thing about Riley's character, is he still has a mind of an 8-year-old, where where things are going right and he kind of fucks it up really because he doesn't know how to kind of say, well, things have been working out with me, keep my ego in check. Hell, I should just like stop what I'm doing and keep going with it. But he fucks up his opportunity to win a basketball game. Like the first time he just has an issue dribbling, and when he starts to actually play, he fails. And then actually the next thing that happens is in the next game he gets overconfident and then he fails. Then the last game, he does a great job, and then he meets Cindy McPherson's character, and then they lose it to an autistic kid. And then I also wanted to talk about that in this episode, that I didn't like the ending where they had the autistic kid beat him, and that's based on something that happened in real life, where in the 2000s there was this kid that was autistic, and I think what happened was like he was on one side of a stadium and he threw a basketball all the way to the other side, and he landed in the hole into the hoop or whatever, and he got to meet President Bush, and he got to meet a lot of different celebrities. So it kind of felt like, and that happens with people with mental illness, that sometimes you accomplish one thing and people think that you're the second coming of Jesus Christ or you're a national hero for that. And there's two sides of it. There's a really, really bad side to it. There's also kind of like what called the Rain Man side, where it's like, holy shit, now this kid's like an autistic savant for basketball. So I think that's bad because that singles out a person. That's almost like saying, you know what, you know what, if you have an autistic friend who is good at calculating things, you're like, oh wow, there goes the human calculator, or wow, you must be really happy to have this autistic brain because you're a super calculator or whatever. So there's a way of getting objectified. Like I have a friend who is a filmmaker in Rhode Island, and he's been winning awards, he's been doing well, but I would feel very angry, and he wouldn't like it if somebody walked up on stage and said, oh well, this person is autistic and has Asperger's syndrome, so therefore, you know, there's a reason why he's a film buff. There's a reason why he has an encyclopedic knowledge of being a filmmaker. There's a reason why he excels at being a director. It's because of that autistic brain that he has. So, so definitely, you know, it's kind of a sad thing in our culture where people don't understand that, you know, people should not stand out because of their race. People should not stand out because of their mental health label. It is, let's focus on the accomplishment, not the mental illness, or not the mentally ill person doing the accomplishment, not the black person doing the accomplishment. Let's focus on the person doing the accomplishment, person versus race or mental illness. And I also think if you watch this episode, you can almost like kind of think to yourself that, you know, like, well, a lot of people associate black people with basketball, and a lot of people associate mentally ill people with, you know, having a form of success or whatever, or being gifted in a certain area, or like if they're autistic, that they may be a savant in something. So there's always a sense, I say, of maybe if you look at this episode of objectification that blacks receive as far as being basketball players and how black people live up to that, like Riley. And then also the other side is it's not just in the black neighborhood, it's also in the mentally ill neighborhood. You do one thing great when you're autistic or you have Asperger's syndrome, a lot of people are going to assume that's the only thing about you is that, you know, you're Rain Man or whatever. You're the Rain Man. You're Rain Man. And what I mean by Rain Man is that in the movie, his brother doesn't really respect him, Rain Man, until Rain Man is good at counting cards and gambling and numbers, and then at the end he learns to love his brother. But it's ultimately like saying, you know, I see you one way and I see you for your mental illness, but if you have one good thing that you can do very well, that's what it's about. But I also like, you know, Cindy McPherson. Like she's definitely very very cute, and and I also kind of felt bad like for what happens to her. Like, you know, like Granddad is like saying you need to get into her head. So Granddad like says, you know, here are all these stories about her mother being a hoe and whatever. And I kind of felt that's kind of messed up, but it's also kind of true. And Tom's okay with it because Tom wants to win. So it's also kind of about like how adults kind of teach kids to just charging my phone. Adults teach kids to cheat or bad habits and stuff like that. And as a filmmaker, I've definitely seen people encourage their kids to be backstabby or get certain advantages. So we try to teach our kids to be ethical and decent people, but when we kind of encourage our children, but people can be competitive and encourage their children to do bad things, such as all these rumors about her mom, about Cindy's mom, and then also anything sexual is sexual harassment. So they're encouraging Riley to sexually harass her by rumors about her mother and whatever. And I also kind of think that the other thing that I do see is that, you know, I'm a very competitive person, and I know what it's like to like just do filmmaking and then not create something that's a piece of crap. Or sometimes I've done film festivals like the 48-hour film project. I was showing work when I first started out that was kind of crappy, and I've always kind of had a really sinking feeling. So I kind of can understand how Riley feels or wanting to give up really quickly because just because it didn't go his way. But as Granddad said, the thing that Riley has to learn is to practice and then also just get over that grandstanding. Like if it's not worked the first time, try something different. You know, like practice means something, and then also you have to know how to work in a team and whatever. And I also kind of like, you know, what Granddad's trying to teach Riley is, you know what, Riley, you are giving up too quickly, so you can't just do that. Just because things didn't go your way or go how you imagined it doesn't mean that you should give it up. It means that there's the talent's there, but you have to kind of try different things to make it go somewhere. Because, you know, I've been in that situation too in my filmmaking. That, I remember the first film that I did, I thought it was going to be this masterpiece. Everybody's been like, wow, this is like, the next great big filmmaker. And I remember how it was a piece of shit. And it's taken me, years and years to actually, when I was really involved in filmmaking, to actually make something that an audience would well receive. So, there is there is something to say about working hard and actually learning from your failures, not giving up because your delusion of grandeur did not remain a delusion. So, there's a lot of powerful things about this episode. And then also too, like about like again about the autistic kid, I don't mind sharing to you guys, and I'm trying to be a little bit more private about my life. I know, like, I've kind of shared my Boondocks videos, some personal stuff about me, but I was misdiagnosed with autism, so I can kind of understand how that's a little sensitive to me, because I actually didn't even watch the ending of this episode, like, when I was like watching a few minutes ago. But the reason why it bothered me is because I remember, like, when I was a kid, I was really good at science, so my parents assumed that I had Asperger's syndrome. I was good with mental math, because I watched Schoolhouse Rock and other things, so I was good at mental math, and I always kind of seemed to change my talent or the thing I wanted to excel at, because my dad would always be like, oh, well, that's Asperger's syndrome or whatever. So I think that sometimes, if you have a relative, I'm not autistic, I was misdiagnosed, I am not autistic, but if you do have a relative or somebody who has a learning disability, you should not say something like, oh, well, the reason why you're smart or you're excelling in that area is because you're autistic or you have Asperger's syndrome, or the reason why you're so you work so hard at something because you have ADHD, you're hyperactive or whatever, so because that's very demeaning and objectifying. That's almost like the same thing as I said, if there was a black kid that was good at basketball and I said, you know what, well, it's great that you're black, that blackness really helps you be a good basketball player, that would not be that'd be a very disrespectful thing to say. You should not identify people. You should look at the accomplishments, not the race or whatever, and I think that's kind of like one of the main messages. But I also think the other message that comes out of this show is really that teamwork and being competitive the right way and working hard the right way and practicing the right way will get you places, because I do think that's what happens to Riley. Like, Riley's successful when he actually is a team player, but when he actually is like rude and kind of just nasty, he doesn't have that success. So sometimes karma is the bitch, and respect is respect. Or look at what happened to Cindy McPherson. She was kind of arrogant, and then she got torn down. So I think their message is that if you're competitive, arrogance will destroy you. So you have to think about that. So that's all I gotta say about Ballin.